Hello and welcome back. So in my last video, I showed you guys how to create this layout using CSS Grid. The property that I used was called Grid Template Areas. Basically, what I like about the Grid Template Areas, as you see right here, is that I write everything out. So this area is called header. It's spanning 3 columns. It's going to take up its own row. And then I have the image in quotes down below. And this is what I get. Now when I collapse onto smaller screens, I needed a media query to give this layout right here. So for me, learning responsive design, I end up writing a lot of media queries and I just don't like that. Media queries are useful, but they shouldn't really be used to a whole lot other than to change maybe certain features or something. But it just became a headache. So now I'm going to do the same layout, but a different option. So let me get rid of the grid area. Okay, right there. And we're not going to use media queries here. I'm going to show you a fun little trick that I found in this article by CSS Tricks. And so instead of grid template areas, we're going to do grid template columns. So this is really simple. Like let's say I wanted 3 columns that are 33% wide. Then I would just write 33% 3 times, and now I have 3 columns 33% wide, no matter how small or large the screen, right? Another way to write the same thing is to use the repeat function, which will be coming in handy pretty soon. So I'm going to say 33% is the size of the 3 columns. And again, I have the same layout. But I still need a media query, and this image is overflowing out of the container. So we're going to have to fix that. Plus, this guy had its own row to itself. So let's start with how many columns am I going to need? Well, maybe you don't know. So there's an auto fit and autofill. Either one will work here, and they're useful keywords to use. So they basically will determine the number of columns that you'll need in your layout. So you don't need to worry about that. So if you don't know, this is the keyword to use. Then min-max function is nice because you can say at the smallest, let's say I want my grid items to be 300 pixels. At the largest, there's a unit called fraction. That's basically saying this is like a set space, like the amount of available space and the number of items. That fraction kind of divides them into equal units. So here I have 3, and now instead of being squished, it's saying, okay, I have no more available space for the number of items on this row. So now I'm going to move this item onto the next row and shift everything down. Sort of like how Flexbox works at this point. And look, no media query, because remember, we got rid of it. So there's no media query, and now I have that nice layout. So let's work on the CSS Grid H1. All right. So here I'm using grid template column. So I'd go grid column, and I want it to start at the first column. And then the second parameter, so you do slash, is where it's going to end. So the last column. So it's not included, right? So if I want it to end at column 2, basically I'm saying it's going to start here and the ending is going to be at the start of column 2, which that's how it is already. But if I wanted it to span 2 columns, then I would go 1, 3. And so this one at this size is is actually 2 columns wide. So again, I'm starting at column 1 and ending at the end of column 2, at the start of column 3. So on the 3 column layout, right? So now I have 3 columns wide. I'm spanning these two. And this item right here, the black border, is in the last column. So again, whatever number is here, that's basically it's excluded. It's not going to go into column 3. That's just kind of where its border will end, is at the start of column 3. So it's going to go span columns 1 and 2. But again, how many columns will depend on the screen size. So what if I don't know? So -1 by default means the last column. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, it will automatically be calculated. And now I have this title on its own row. And again, just by self, I'm aligning it to the center. The other thing was this image here. We had it on the second row, right? So I can go to grid row, and I will say that it's in row 2. So now here, it's in row 2. Perfect. The other thing was this guy right here was spanning these 2 rows, right? So now it's not. And that's solid white. So now you can go to grid row, and instead of, again, the number of rows change, so it's easier just to say I want it to, because it's already based on the sequential order. It's in the row that it needs to be at. It just needs to span these 2 rows. So right here, I just say span 2, and it spans. So now I have the layout that I had previously, and without using any media queries, it collapses and it looks really nice. So that's why I like using the auto fit, auto fill, and min-max functions, because it makes everything easier. And I mean, it's not as intuitive, but using grid column and grid row really makes it easy to achieve this layout. But again, the template area is a little more straightforward. But like I said, there's this article by CSS Tricks, and they go into all the properties. So I did grid row, grid column. Those are just shorthand for grid column start, grid column end. Right, so you would just say what's the number, and here they have the code snippets and the visuals. So here you can see, okay, here's the rows, the lines that it's divided in, and you can even name them. So span call _start instead of like span 2 or something. You can actually name they're called lines, the grid lines. You can name them. So this goes into all of that, and they just show you the different ways that you can declare these things. So you can, just like how we did columns 3, you can do 3 span 2, and then the rows is pretty much the same syntax too, but this one they named it third line. So yeah, just feel free to look at that article. I will make sure to link it down below. But that basically concludes this video on how to create the same layout using grid template columns. I hope you learned a lot from this video. I hope you like it. Feel free to leave comments down below and make sure to like and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.